Imagine, after a grueling day of endless efforts to try and put up with the demanding tasks presented by the modern education system, you are under the impression that it is all over and that you can now peacefully reside in your room and partake in your preferred form of relaxation. In that very moment, the door leading to your room promptly opens and is shut following the entrance of a familiar figure. The sight of all 16 hours that you spent awake not being dedicated towards the completion of further assignments or spent towards productivity in general has angered, even enraged this figure. Now, try and take a guess who this figure is. Yes, that is right, it is your parent. Yuxal, or whatever your name is, put that phone away this instant. I have done so much for you so that you can study and obtain a proper career and establish yourself as an individual. And how do you repay me? By wasting your time, sitting idly, scrolling on your phone? Back in my day, I used to do all that was required from me unprompted and without even the slightest bit of assistance from my own father. Now, I could have chose to whine about this in repetitive conversation to my peers, but instead I chose to make it into a TED Talk, but not in the way that you would think. A particular nuance that had caught my attention in this short but routine encounter was the way that my father had articulated his sentences. If you pay close attention to the section where he states that he hadn't received even the slightest bit of assistance from his own father, you may notice that it seems that the efforts of the latter have gone unappreciated. This expression alone might not carry that much relevance. However, there is more. From the short lecturing, one can also analyze and understand that my father believes that he has gone through a phase of improvement compared to his own parent, and that he is now in enough sync with his child that he provides him with all that is needed. Unlike the case that persisted between him and his own parent. Though, judging from the tone and mannerisms of my own recount, one can tell that I do not see any signs of synchronization with the new generation, or myself. Upon pondering to myself about this after the concise encounter, I had thought that there is a clear lack of understanding between parent and child. And that since I am the child here, and since I understand my preferences and requests perfectly, I will surely be able to sympathize with my own children in the future. That is when I realized that the issue of the parent not being able to cater to the needs of the child, despite being confident that they will be able to do so since they were once on the receiving end of this miscommunication, is not only a one-time instance, but a repeating cycle. That, dear listeners, is what I have coined as the hopeless father paradox. As per my observations, generations and generations of parents grew confident, believing that they will be able to fill in the gaps of inconsiderateness left by their own parents, only to fail once more and to make their own children believe that gaps of inconsiderateness left by them themselves exist that will have to be patched by the children as the new generation. But why is an asynchronous relationship between parent and child inevitable? Why can't the attitude of the parent be in perfect harmony with that of the child? What is the reason for the hopeless father paradox, and what can we do to mitigate its effects? To kick off my breakdown of this intriguingly unique yet essential concept, I would like to present my hypothesis regarding the assertion. Let us consider our assertion as the following statement. Parents will never be able to fully cater to the needs of the child, no matter how confident they are in their knowledge of preventing the indifference of parents coming from first-hand experience. Now that that has been established, we may move on to discussing why this discrepancy exists in the first place. As per my thorough analysis of this phenomenon, the reason for this occurrence is the fact that when the original child, let's call them person X, had first encountered that his or her requests were not being adequately met or even perceived correctly by his or her own parents, times were simply different. For example, the 1970s. But as person X grew and as time went on and on, he or she was less and less immersed in the environment of a kid and started to look at things more and more like an adult, eventually completely losing touch with the world of the mentality of the youth. Therefore, his or her idea of the needs and wants of a child have remained constant from the 1970s, while, in fact, the requirements of the new generation have shifted quite marginally since then. As a result, even though person X knows perfectly how to satisfy the needs of a child, his or her techniques only apply to that of the 1970s and aren't even considered the bare minimum by the standards of today. To sum up, due to the gradual progress in the mentality of the youth of our society, and this progress not finding its counterpart in the minds of aspiring parents, total synchronization and harmony with the new generation may never be achieved. Now, as depressing and as pessimistic as this sounds, there are ways to mitigate the effects of the hopeless father paradox. And despite not being perfect, common ground with the new generation may be achieved. And that, dear listeners, is where the concluding section of my TED Talk comes into play. In order to successfully comprehend the course of action necessary to alleviate the effects of the hopeless father paradox, we must first identify the exact phase of life of our dear person X, where this discrepancy first begins to exert its presence. Upon consideration of our hypothesis once more, one can extract the fact that the source of this asynchronization is originating from the very moment that the first parent or aspiring parent or person X is first disconnected from the fast-paced and ever-evolving world of the mentality of the youth. Therefore, to formulate an all-encompassing solution, an aspiring parent must take initiative to try and integrate him or herself into the world of the youth to accurately trace how the needs and wants of the new generation develop, and in turn, how to ideally address them. Secondly, to achieve the optimal degree of understanding between parent and child, one must first obtain conditions that allow the offspring to communicate his or her needs and desires to the parent freely. Now, it goes without saying that concrete steps must be implemented from the side of the kid as well to achieve this feat, of course. However, since the raising and upbringing of the child is mainly influenced by the attitude of the parent, it would be more sensible to focus on paths that they can take to ensure this outcome. This way, whatever issues or concerns that plague the child can have their respective solutions conjured by the parent in a much swifter manner. Now, as I was trying to make sense of this complex parental relations, I had spotted a fragment of a tabloid newspaper laying around. Now, as you know, people of my generation do not associate themselves with newspapers. However, this one in particular had to do with the recent 74th International Astronautical Congress taking place in our capital, Baku, and with the attendance of futuristic entrepreneur Elon Musk. That is why I kept reading through it. There, a particular phrase had caught my attention. The one where the moderator of the conference had decided to conclude his speech with the following words: "Every idea, ... be a reality." The reason that I left one of the words out in my speech was because there was an apparent printing error in the newspaper, and that this word was illegible. That is when I realized that both the words can and cannot can fit into this context and can be supported rationally. Every idea can be a reality, or every idea cannot be a reality, or not every idea can be a reality. Both of these make sense. That is why now I would like to apply this same occurrence to my TED Talk. Becoming the perfect parent is ... possible or impossible? In this circumstance as well, both options can be supported with logic and reasoning, but now being provided the explanation and breakdown of the hopeless father paradox. The answer can be decided by solely you yourself.